program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
All right, everybody, let's call this meeting to order. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight to the November 5th Plan Commission meeting. Actually, is this broadcast live? Okay. The meeting is being broadcast live by Valley Media Works on Charter Channel 994, 101.9 FM, and online at valleymediaworks.org. I understand that we might be having problems with the commissioner's microphones again, but the speaker's microphone and Scott's and mine's are working, so hopefully we can make it work. Back to script here. The Planning Commission attempts to conduct its public hearings in a relatively informal manner within the constraints that we must deal with the issues before us in an orderly and business-like fashion. We give the applicant an opportunity to speak first, and then others, either for or against the proposal, are each permitted to speak once. We do request that everyone will restrict their comments to the issues before us, avoid unnecessary repetition, and be prudent with use of time. We want to be sure that we have adequate time to review all items and discuss them on equal diligence. Please turn off any cell phones or turn them to silent or other devices. If you plan on speaking tonight, we have yellow forms in the back. If you turn them over to Ryan on the countertop up here, that'd be appreciated. Before speaking tonight, please introduce yourself with name and address. And that takes us to item number 1, public discussion for recommendation of City Council, annexation Sherman Creek, 2351 Sherman Creek Road. Mr. Petrie.
Thank you. Good evening. Before you is an annexation request for a single-family home located at 2351 Sherman Creek Road. The parcel is on the west side of Eau Claire. The owners would like to petition the city to annex their property from the town of Union to the city of Eau Claire, approximately 1.3 acres of land with a single-family home. It is within the sewer service area. Sanitary sewer and water is available along the street. In your packet is an aerial photograph showing the parcel. This parcel is adjacent to the city to the north and to the east. This is consistent with the comprehensive plan. This item will be on the council agenda for November 13th. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Ryan. One other thing, I think we understand that the microphones are working on from Valley Media Works. They're just not working on the speakers here tonight. I'm sorry, so questions for Ryan? Anybody? All right, I don't see anybody. Thanks. Is the applicant here? Oh, okay. All right, so this one is a public hearing, so if there is anybody here that'd like to speak for or against, now is your opportunity. Anybody like to discuss this one? All right, I guess I'm not seeing anybody, so we'll be looking for a motion. Yes, Terry.
I'll make a motion to approve the annexation of the property.
Motion? Yeah.
Second.
All right, Terry, well, the second. I need discussion. All right, I'm not seeing it. Let's call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, great. On to item number 2. Again, for recommendation of council, certified survey map at Gateway Park. Mr. Petrie again.
Thank you. Before you is a certified survey map for 3 lots with right-of-way dedication in Gateway Industrial Park on the northwest side of Eau Claire. Ayers Associates is requesting approval for the 3 lots with a small portion of right-of-way being dedicated along County Line Road. In your packet is a CSM and aerial photograph of the parcels. The CSM dedicates a small triangle along County Line Road to make the existing right-of-way consistent with the street. Also, the property is being subdivided into 3 parcels and 1 out parcel or outlot along County Road T. This CSM does review by the Plan Commission and City Council. The City Council will hear this on November 13th. Staff would recommend approval of the request. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thanks. Any questions? Terry Peterson.
What is the third parcel? Is that the right-of-way along E?
That is correct.
Any additional questions for Ryan? All right, I'm not seeing any. Thanks, Ryan. Is the applicant here? Come on up.
Good evening. I'm Angie Goodwin with Ayers Associates here representing Gateway Industrial Park. I have nothing further to add, but can answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions? All right, I guess we're all tongue-tied tonight. All right, thank you. Okay, this one is a public, for public hearing, so if there's anybody here who'd like to discuss this item, now is your opportunity. Anybody? Okay, so I guess we're looking for another motion. Or a motion on this one. Craig?
I'll move approval.
A motion?
Second.
Second, thanks, Jeremy. Okay, any discussion? Not seeing any, so let's call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, great. Good luck, Angie. Okay, so that takes us to discussion direction, item number 3A, multifamily design standards. Ryan, again.
I'm going to give this presentation right here. It's a PowerPoint that we presented to not only staff was involved, the established neighborhoods were involved, and established developers. The established neighborhoods that we invited were the 3rd Ward, East Side Hill, North Riverfronts, and Randall Park neighborhood. In your packet is the memo that was sent out along with the multifamily design standards. If Scott or Pat have anything to add, they can add it throughout the presentation. So pretty much what we did, we went through an overview of the existing standards with the multifamily design manual. Most of those standards are for suburban. You okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Most of the standards are for fringe areas of the city of Eau Claire. We talked about those in the discussion. Also, we went over the trends in established neighborhoods, what we have been seeing throughout the last 20 to 30 years. We also went through the memo, the examples of the changes, and with photographs or with pictures showing the potential changes. We also talked about examples of what we've seen throughout the neighborhoods, in particular established neighborhoods. And then next step going forward. The existing standards within the multifamily design manual, as I mentioned, most of the new development is on the fringe area. Most of the duplexes that have been built are with 2-car garages. Some of the new multifamily has been with garages either attached, detached. In more of the downtown area, we've seen underground parking for the multifamily. You also saw some underground parking on the fringe area down by the mall as well. The Plan Commission does review all multifamily. They typically do not review duplexes. So trends that we've seen in established neighborhoods. Most of the redevelopment does not include garages. Randall Park in particular, they do not put garages on those. Most of the projects have alleyway access. Some of them may not. Density, scale, compatibility has been questioned by staff, neighborhoods, Plan Commission, and council. Compatibility, for example, could be for a single story or a 2-story or 2.5 story. Is that compatible with the surrounding land uses or surrounding structures? Also, potentially design and architecture detail has been lacking in the new structures that have been built. So now we'll go over the examples of potential changes. This is attached in your memo now. Design with porches, new from existing duplexes or new duplexes being built. This is one example. Having a larger porch along the front. It has the 2 entry doors, as you see. It's got the gable roof and variation within the gable roof. Also has a larger overhang, so you can utilize that porch for seating area. Also, this is an example of one that does not have large overhangs. It does have the gable or the pitch roof, but the porch area is large but has no overhang from the roof. Also, potential changes is, do we prefer hip roofs versus gable roofs? If you do a gable roof, it does add more stories typically, or more height to the structure. The hip roof is more flat. Going back to the slide before, both of these have gable type roofs. So that would be a potential change. Also talking about dormers. So this is a duplex that has a dormer on top, so it does feel a little taller. It adds a little more roof variation. It does have the gable roof as well. And then potentially adding, this is a 2-story duplex, the cornice line in the middle, dividing the first floor and the second floor. It does have the gable roof as well. It does have the smaller porches, separated front doors. If there's any questions, just let me know as we go through. If we want to go back to any slides, I can do that at the end as well. Here's another duplex that has a 2-story duplex. It does have the variation in the front elevation. That has a larger porch. It has the windows, larger windows facing the street. Another change potentially would be adding pitch roofs or higher parapet roofs. Excuse me. The gable roofs, again, noted on this duplex. It does have the separated front doors. Does have the masonry on the bottom. Also a more modern duplex that you see throughout the community. This is more of a fringe area duplex, but would that be appropriate in the established neighborhoods? Does have the higher parapet again. Looking at duplexes with separated entry doors, each making it more feel like a single family potentially, or not. It does have the larger porch again. It does have the gable roofs with the dormers. Also looking at wider trim, especially on the ends of the buildings and around the windows. That is an added feature that most of the older neighborhoods have, established neighborhoods have. That's something that we have looked at as staff. Windows was discussed in heavy with the neighborhoods and the developers. Here's a picture of an existing home in the Randall Park neighborhood that has windows that are taller, has the trim around the windows, has the larger porch again, has the dormer. It's something we potentially could look at for change. Another example that's in Randall Park neighborhood has the larger porch in the front, has the larger windows, the taller windows with trim around them. Roof line examples. These are getting into more larger buildings, but this apartment downtown has variation in the roof lines and variation within the building, push back, bump back, something that most people prefer. Then you also have an example of one that does not have very much roof line variation. Now moving forward, we're going to be looking at recent redevelopment within the older neighborhoods. We went through each example with the group. First starting off with this duplex. It's pretty basic. It does have the slider windows, pretty small in the front. Does have the roof overhang, however it is lacking detail. Does have the 2 front entry doors. Here's another duplex that is a 4-square duplex. Again, it has very slider windows. It has not much detail in the siding. It does have a porch with columns, so it's a little better than this one, but it's still lacking some details that potentially we're looking for.
Say, Ryan, quick. So are these new? Both of these are new or remodeled?
So now what we're going through, these pretty much have been built in the last 20 to 30 years. Since 1995 we went back. I believe this one was built in 1999, so it's about 19 years old. This one's a little newer. I think this was built in 2001. Now looking at this proposal or this development that has occurred, this has a larger porch in the front. It does have the shutters on the sides of the windows. It does have some masonry in the front. It does have the dormers as well, which the tree is sort of blocking. But this one's a little better than, say, this one. This one was built in, I believe, 2006. Then going forward, this is on 10th Avenue. This has a hip roof. It is a 4-unit with 2 entry doors in the front and 2 on the side. This is a little more detail elevation. It does have the larger porch. So this was a little more detailed than this one. This has the hip roof, which makes it feel a little less dense and less tall. It is next to a single story on the south. To the north is a 2-story. This is the building on Niagara Street, all brick facade. It does have the shared common entry. This is a 4-unit. It does have the larger windows, a variation in the windows, window detailing. Again, this was more of a hip roof than a gable roof. This one is built on Chippewa. That was built in 2016. It does have the gable roof. It does have the larger porches, variation in the windows, the taller windows. That one's the newest one of all these. Another one that was built in 2012. It has the dormer roof. It has the larger porch, common entry off the main sidewalk. It does have the taller windows again. And then finally, a single-story duplex that was built in 2004. One front door, one door on the side. It has the slider windows. It has the gable roof, but it lacks detail and design. And that's one of the only single-story ones I could find. So with that, going forward, we would like to have a discussion with the Plan Commission and then potentially write some new language to be added to the existing multifamily design standards for established neighborhoods. With that, I would take questions or comments. I can go back to any picture you want to talk about, anything you want to talk about going forward, what you think.
Questions for Ryan? Yeah, Terry.
Thank you for the presentation. Did you get a good response or turnout from the developers?
We had a few developers come to the meeting. We also met with a few of the bigger ones in town. A lot of them are for it. It would even the playing field potentially. Some developers do this, some do not. They did talk about money, obviously. The slider windows are significantly cheaper, but they don't last as long and they're not as sustainable and efficient. Talking with one of the developers, he is all for it. He doesn't see any issue with it. He pretty much meets all the design standards we have currently. The neighborhood seems to be okay with his projects potentially. The newest duplex that is getting built is on Chippewa Street. It is all brick facade. It's being built by Mogensen's group. Has the larger porch, has the dormers, has the off-street parking. He met all. He doesn't do the slider windows. That project would be very appropriate for what we're looking for going forward. But most of them were in favor, potentially, of the changes.
Okay, yeah, Terry, please.
Getting back to the cost and concern, obviously, the rising rents is a topic here now. Maybe Commissioner Seymour could answer this question as well. Are these changes or expectations or guidelines expected to add a significant increase in costs, which would then add an increase in rents, or any comments on that?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, Mr. Seymour might know more about what it costs for, let me go back a little, potentially what it costs for windows like these that are sliders, and then compared to windows that have a little more detail, a little more double hung windows. I don't know if Mr. Seymour wants to comment on any of that. I mean, I know it does add cost, but I don't know what it costs per window.
lot of variety out there, but whenever I'm building something, I push for quality products. And I think as a developer, it makes sense. So it probably doesn't answer the question, but I think it's always good to use quality materials in any construction project.
Any additional questions? Yeah, Terry Peterson.
Yes, would we be looking more at these new standards, absolute standards, or recommendations, guidelines?
It's a good question. What does the planning commission members think? With staff-wise, we thought we would come up with a list, and the developer would pick which ones they want to meet. Now, all those proposals would come before this committee, or this board, and the plan commission would potentially say, oh, you need to add a little more detail in the design, or staff could meet with them and encourage them to do more design. Now, for example, the duplex that is getting built on Chippewa Street, they did have a part masonry on it, and more or less so I had a conversation with Mr. Mogensen and encouraged him to do all masonry, and he said sure, I'll do that. And so pretty much just encouraging the developers to do it. Potentially they will do it. Now, that's one case, but you're right, we do need to establish some kind of guideline for them. You know, maybe it's a list, you pick 4 of the things, or we just leave it up to the plan commission to make the determination. That's something that we should talk about.
I'm just thinking in some neighborhoods, gables might be very appropriate with the surrounding, houses and the like, and other neighborhoods that
Correct.
would stick out like a sore thumb and probably would not fit in.
That's correct.
Yeah, if I could just add as well, in the current design manual, there's kind of a list of 12 items as other design considerations, and that's something that the Plan Commission can utilize from this list, like Ryan's talking about, for things like density bonuses and such. We don't really get into that into much of that at this point, but those are some things that we can certainly bring before you for consideration. Is kind of here's the menu, and if you start choosing from these, then that can give you some other benefits as part of your proposal. So that's one way to kind of make it not really a hard and fast, you must do these 12 things. But if you choose to do a number of these, then that gives you some other advantages.
In my neighborhood, it's all single-family homes, but we have tuck unders, we have 2-story tutors, we have 2-story dwelling homes, we have a story and a half with the garages on the end, and the variety kind of, fits too. You don't want a bunch of row houses that all work together.
Sure, absolutely.
I just want to go into it.
Right, and we heard that, we got that feedback as well during the kind of developer and neighborhood meeting that we had. It was that kind of being eclectic and having variety is part of what makes a neighborhood that way. Trying to get rid of the homogeneity and being a little bit different is good, and that's why we're looking at these as in addition to kind of thing. A larger list, a larger menu, essentially, to choose from.
That's similar to what you've done in other communities or seen?
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah, and again, this is a traditional, I guess, planning practice, as it were, to look at this type of approach. Again, certain communities may be a little bit more rigid in requiring a number of these, and exactly that can lead to higher costs of construction, higher costs for rent, and so on and so forth. And that's certainly something we're cognizant of as well, that moving forward, we want to make sure that these things are design features and not necessarily just gingerbread just to add to costs.
Great. Additional question? Any follow-up? No? Greg?
It seems to me that some of them, it might be worth having a checklist that is issued, say, subsequent to the commission meeting, to say that these items have been reviewed, or these items have gotten comment. One or another project might come in and it's got great proportion but poor detail. Nice roof but bad windows. And I think that if we discuss these items, and when we discuss them, they need to be reported that they were discussed and found to be balanced a certain way, or found to be, just, it's like, well, this says it meets all these things because it's here, but gosh, that's ugly. That can happen. Everything should have been light, but boy, it just doesn't look like the one next door. So I think that as much as anything, we need to go into a format so that we can quickly insert commentary, quickly record the discussion so that there's a consistent approach to how the discussion moves, more than a consistent approach to how much overhang is enough.
Yeah, sounds good. Additional questions, comments? Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Petrie, I was kind of wondering about the framing of the discussion about established neighborhoods, that focus here, and how did you decide to really just focus on established neighborhoods versus a more general standard across the whole city?
Yep, so our existing multifamily design manual has some standards in there. We've seen more trend in the suburban Eau Claire, I guess you could call, where they have 2-car garages, they have windows and doors facing the street. We just felt like we have certain standards right now in place. Most of the multifamily we have seen, the larger multifamily, has met all this and gone above and beyond multifamily design standards for right now. We're just focusing on established neighborhoods of the various projects that we have received in the past. Lacking design, encouraging from the neighborhoods that we need more design in our established neighborhoods. And we felt that we don't have any standards at this time, particularly in the established neighborhoods.
Do you see strengthening the standards overall too as part of this package? Then that's the way it sounds.
Yes, we should encourage more design. We want these structures to potentially last 100 years or up to 100 years. Potentially some of these structures, in some opinion, could be demoed in the next 10 years, potentially. Just making a better design for this long-term sustainability of Eau Claire and the multifamily that we're going to receive. I know that there's some projects in the works that will be large multifamily, not just in the established neighborhoods, but also in the fringe area that should be encouraged to be designed appropriately.
On a roll.
There was the one example of I believe it was the Metro Crossing apartment building, and it really seemed to almost lack a roof, or any sort of visible roof at least. Obviously there is one, but how do you think we could address that issue with something of that scale? What kind of roof design would you see?
From my opinion, variation in the overhangs, maybe a little more bump back. You can see in the top photo, the Phoenix Park one, this is bumped back probably 3 or 4 feet. This is bumped back about a foot. Now they do the variation in color, but then again, the roof line, it's all straight, and it doesn't follow. Now the top photo has a variation, that roof overhang throughout the whole roof. That little detail doesn't add that much cost, but it does. The detail goes a long ways. I mean, pretty much just encouraging them to do more of a variation in roof or roof line to break up the eye. I think that is key on a building like that, especially given that size.
No questions, Chairman? No? All right. Anybody else? Questions? How about, you met with all the neighborhood associations? I know we got Randall Park reps here, but any feedback for them?
I know most of them are in support of. I believe some of them would like to speak tonight. give their feeling on it. I do know Third Ward is here as well, and Randall Park. I think it would be good for them. East Side Hill, we met with them. They were at the meeting. They were encouraged by it. They don't see that many projects, but they are seeing more renovations and remodeling occurring. They did just get 2 new single family in the neighborhood that are appropriate design. But they don't see as the multifamily as the other neighborhoods potentially would.
Additional questions from Mr. Petrie? No, I believe Scott was hoping we'd open this up to the public discussion. Unless anybody has any objections, I would encourage us to do that. All right, let's do that. So, and Ryan, unless you got anything else to add,
Okay, you know who I am.
welcome back.
Thank you. I'm good. Helene Smyer, 320 Broadway Street, Historic Randall Park neighborhood. I had just a couple of comments. As you know, most of you know, we have established a not-for-profit revitalization corporation. So my question is, if we decide we purchase a duplex, let's say, we make it an owner-occupied duplex, and we want to put a porch back on, what happens, how do we deal with setbacks? Our whole neighborhood is non-conforming, and this always used to be an issue, that we're going to be non-conforming unless you're going to change all the lot lines. So will there be a difficulty if we want to reinstate, however you say it, put the porch back on the way it should have been? Because many of them have been taken off. Would we have a big struggle? How would we deal with that in terms of the new standardized setbacks? Or would that be a problem? Or a problem that we would just address when we get to it? Or it could be workable? Or
That's a good question. Now, typically in established neighborhoods, we would take the average within 100 feet of the property lines. So say if your property was at 20, the neighbors were at 15, and the neighbor was at 12, potentially you would take the average of the 3. So if you want to expand that porch 5 feet into the setback, potentially that would be allowed, administratively approved. That's only for established neighborhoods, so potentially that would work.
okay.
It's case by case, though. There is a variance process. Otherwise, you could go through potentially with the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay, all right. And then you'll remember we had trouble with that word compatible when we had those new multi-family dwellings put up. And I think at one point the commission did not agree with the neighborhood about what compatible should look like, and I didn't bring the manual up, but in our neighborhood plan, it specifies, but it's still, there's a lot of subjectivity. And so how do you nail down compatibility is what I'm trying to say, so that we don't have those oversized buildings in the neighborhood, because, we think there's some that were just too big for the setting they were in. And my husband always says, your rule of thumb ought to be, would you want this house next to you? And if your answer is no, it's too big, then it's too big in our neighborhood too, or something. I mean, we have a lot of big homes in our neighborhood, but block by block, some blocks have little homes, and so you can't just, could you put just giant multifamily?
I guess that's the struggle that we kind of face here. And that's
Okay.
what Ryan's trying to do, is to kind of massage and give guidelines for folks that want to do new projects or redevelop and include a project. So I think they'll always look to the neighborhood for feedback on it, but I think what they're trying to do is give future developers some guideline to understand what to expect. And if they meet certain boxes, that the staff would maybe support those more likely than not.
Okay. And
Am I reading that right, Ryan? Yeah, okay.
okay. Well, we already talked at the meeting about this, the masonry on the bottom. That really doesn't fit our neighborhood. So we've sort of already made that kind of clear. But one last thing, you didn't talk about colors at all. In our neighborhood, we have a lot of Victorian homes with 2, 3 different colors. The trim is a color, the fascia, whatever it is. So is color an issue with design? Does that come in there? Because I didn't see, you didn't say anything about colors. It was a lot of other features. Is that important or not? Oh, it's on your last bullet, variation in colors. So is that something you can require? You know, in the beginning of the manual, there are certain words that say you shall, you must, and then there are others that say it's recommended, you should, or we'd like you to. So would colors be like you shall, you must, or?
We encourage appropriate colors. But no, I mean, unfortunately, the manual can only go so far. I think most of the colors that we've seen have been appropriate, but you're talking about color detailing.
Like variation of color on one house.
Correct, from the trim, the wider trim on the windows and around the edge, and then the facade would be a different color. The siding would be one color, the trim would be another color.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, that's what we're looking
Ryan,
for.
I think
Craig's got a question.
I really think this is the point where having essentially an established list of discussion items, one can go through and say roof line. And when you're talking compatibility, say the roof line does match or the roof line doesn't match, or it matches well or it matches poorly. The pattern of windows or fenestration matches well, matches poorly. The level of detail or the materials present on the facade match well or they match poorly. And you can work your way down and say that on 5 different topics, all of them badly, you have a way of saying this has got very little to do with the neighborhood. If we can say, well, okay, so the roof is sort of similar, that's better than average. Or here's the windows and they're placed nicely, but they're kind of small. As you work your way through the standard list, you can determine how much compatible it seems to the most people, or how much incompatible it seems. The main floor matching, I mean, because I think in your neighborhood too, there's been a lot of that variety where the newer buildings are built with their first floor up, so you can get an extra couple feet, you know, in that lower level of renting out. And that's a lot different than your buildings that were all much closer to ground level, or the little tiny house that's next door. So it's foundations, platform height, window distribution, materials present, variety of materials. Again, that would be within the multi-colors, would be a multiple variety of pieces. And you could begin to you could list these things. These are the things we're going to discuss every time. And then we're going to say, this is, you can see, the roof is not like the other one. You can see, the windows are not like the other ones. But we would discuss them, and I say we would have that checklist where the organization, or the neighborhood can also say, we hate this house because the roof is crappy and the windows don't line up. And if we have that established list, you've got that breakdown, we can come back to time after time and say, yeah, that one down the block, yeah, it was kind of big, but the roof was kind of nice.
Okay, when you say match, do you mean match to the houses on that block, match to the general appearance of homes? And
would have to keep, as a designer, I want to keep my options open for how much new and how much old I might combine in a building. I want the freedom, and I want my client to have the freedom to have what they want. I also want to match as many various groups that might have input about it, and I want my client to get along with the neighbors when they're done.
okay.
So I would like to have, again, the freedom to have a lot of different things happen in a different way.
We have,
I have to have a higher floor because it's floodplain, We need to have enough room for mechanical systems and heat and cooling. I might need to also ask for the roof to be higher than the neighbors, because you can't fit all the new stuff into the old kinds of buildings. So if I knew what the list was, I could also say, here's what I'm going to trade you. Here's what I'm going to trade you. And for more of this, I'll do less of that.
Okay.
And I think it starts that discussion by having that standard list that we can say, oh, here's, and then we find in 2 or 3 years, we forgot one. We can add one to the bottom of the list and say, oh, also, by the way, paving. How do we want driveways paved in this older neighborhood? We don't want them, we've got a lot of gravel driveways we're okay with. Or we've got a lot of new gravel driveways. We don't want any more new gravel driveways. We want them to be brick. You can look at them side by side. Here's one with a nice roof. There's one with a crappy roof.
Okay. It's interesting to, following what you're saying, the beauty of our neighborhood is we do have a lot of variation. For example, I think Ryan referred to the house John Mogensen just built on Chippewa. It is much smaller than the larger houses that were built 3 years ago. But it, do you have his or no? It's brick, it's a bungalow, it's very well done. He does have the basement rooms, but it's still much smaller, but it's fine. I mean, it looks, that's part of the variation of the neighborhood. It's not like we don't want everything to look the same, but it's just interesting.
Historic high, because you believe it is not necessarily the same, but it's compatible.
Oh, well, and plus it's all brick, and so that's kind of it's more sustainable than, it will last longer, I think, than anything else. I like brick homes, but it's not the same. There was something else that you mentioned that I was going to comment on. Now I forgot. It's gone. But I don't think I have any other comments, but I thank you for addressing this, because we have had problems with that in the past, so this should help. Thank you.
I'm Steve Ronstrom from the Third Ward Neighborhood Association, and I think my comments was I just think it's a really healthy process. I'm new to this, but I think to reach out to the neighborhood associations, work with the staff people. We had a good group, the developers, and I just know, sitting on your side, you're wondering if everything came together. It was, we've had some really, good meetings. I think it was really surprising to me how quick people came together. There was concerns on rent, concerns on costs. It was so healthy to have the developers there. I learned so much. I was kind of, I have a boring meeting, and I learned so much from them. And then the staff showed, Pat and the staff showed pictures, and it was surprising to me how, well, do you like this for the Third Ward? Or how about this one? And that there was almost pretty quick some real similarities. I was always, everybody's got their opinions, but people came together really quickly about, yeah, that'll fit in. Yeah, that's a reasonable thing to do. And the whole balance of regulation, we need some, we don't need too much. I love the word freedom there to, put in other things. And the developers present really, explained out to me the difference in the roofs and these other things. So it's a good process. We do need it. I'm very grateful that the city's, moving forward. We do hope that we will see appropriate development, especially around the YMCA in the Third Ward there, and to really take a look at how everything kind of flows out. So thanks for your interest, and just please be assured that we covered every question that you asked in these meetings that led up to tonight. Take care. Thank you.
Mr. Armstrong, one second. Does anybody have any questions?
I'm not paid, so I'm not going to answer if I don't know.
All right.
No,
Thank you very much.
You got a good staff, and there was rapport, and nobody was getting mad or anything. It was very well done.
Good to hear. Thank you. Okay. Is there anybody else here that would like to discuss in the Public? Not seeing anybody. Last chance? All right. So what are we looking for here, guys? Do you need anything from us, or?
So I think just at this point, again, appreciate the time and attention to, again, the work, a lot of good work that Ryan really focused in and put together. So yeah, definitely very many kudos to Ryan for doing that. And I guess just in terms of next steps, we'll take a lot of comments we've had here, start refining them, start looking at the language in the manual, language in the code, and then we'll have probably one more these types of discussions. We'll see if we are able to kind of reach out to the public one more time separately, but at least come back here to Plan Commission in this type of format before we bring any kind of formal revisions to codes and such. So certainly opportunity to ponder, to review, and give us any comments in the next few weeks for sure. So I'm not sure, I think just talking to Ryan here, the dais, I don't think we really talked about timeline. I think December meeting would probably be the earliest we'd have anything back to you again.
Sounds good. Terry?
I like a lot what Mr. Graham put forward is listing the different elements, the roof lines, the windows, porches, etc. So we look at those elements and don't overlook them. I have a friend who lives in a condo on the northwest side of the city of on Golf Course. Every one of those condominiums are fourplexes, they're all the same. They're boring, pardon my expression, but it is. You gotta have some variety too. You don't want a four-story building next to a story and a half, but you gotta have some variety. I think the checklist, the different elements that we look at that as we look at some of these same things would be really helpful for us and the neighborhood associations and the community at large.
Yeah, agreed. It certainly helps when you're coming in to do a project if you know kind of what you're looking to accomplish. So trade things off right there.
Thank you.
Okay, so then we've got we're on to 2017 development map and report. Mr. Pat Ivory.
Came into focus. Good evening. Since we had a fairly short meeting schedule for tonight, we thought we'd just give a quick overview of the 2017 development map and report. This is a report that we typically like to have finished in normally in May or June, but due to some circumstances within the department this year, we weren't able to finish it until October. So some of this is old news, but so kind of go over a little bit of this, and then I'll just kind of give a recap of kind of where we're at for 2018 too, also in terms of building permits. This report actually has been prepared since about 1980, so we actually have close to 40 years worth of development records for the city of Eau Claire that we find that a lot of people do find valuable. In years past, it used to be just a paper copy. This has gone on our website within the last 7 or 8 years or so. So it's a little more difficult to tell or gauge exactly how many people actually access this information. When we used to have paper copies of it, we used to go through 50 to 75 copies of that that people would request. Now that it's on the web, we really don't have a real good way of judging exactly how that is accessed, but we do periodically. We'll get calls about this information. We'll refer them to our website where we have it. Also, as part of this, in terms of more than just monitoring development activity, we also take a look at how the development has been done in relation to our comprehensive plan. So there's one chapter in there that talks about where the development is occurring, the annexations in terms of how that relates to our land use plan, and other elements of our comprehensive plan. So we do that every year to make sure that we're on track. And we use that as we go forward when we look at updating our comprehensive plan in terms of how this development activity, if it's been in compliance with our comp plan or not. So that's another important part of this process of going through this report here. A couple things I just wanted to kind of touch upon. And first of all, in terms of annexation activity, this would be the annexation activity that occurred in 2017, where we had 16 annexations that totaled about 95 acres. So actually, looking back in previous years, probably was a little bit above average. We had two larger annexations last year. One down was for Mills Fleet Farm, which was a larger annexation, and then another one for a residential subdivision down off of Grover Road. So those were kind of the two larger ones. And that brought our city area to 34.49 square miles. And you can see it has gone up fairly slowly over the years, but that's where we're at right now. In terms of rezonings, we actually had a fairly busy year last year for rezonings with 21 applications that went through the Plan Commission and Council that involved about 171 acres. And then subdivisions was a very busy year last year also, where we had 10 subdivisions that the Plan Commission and Council reviewed. Involved about 71 acres in land. And then also in terms of dwelling units, it was higher than normal with 156 lots and 180 dwelling units that were involved. Examples of this were the High Clare was one of the subdivisions, and then over Hoyam Acres we had some lots over in that area, and then up on Jeffers Road we had a couple subdivisions with twin lots up in that area, so that kind of covers some of that subdivision activity. In terms of single-family homes, what this shows here is the breakdown by value of the homes. Let me see if I can zoom into this just a little bit. What we found out in terms of 2017, these were the homes that were less than $150,000 in value. And we had 14 of those homes that were constructed in 2017. And actually, looking back over the previous few years, the number of homes in this category actually increased in 2017. Back in 2016, we only had 6 homes in this category. So it's kind of interesting that when we're talking about home cost and affordability and things like that, that actually we did have an increase in homes in that lower value last year. This is the area, the breakdown here for 150 to 200,000, where we had 13. Then kind of in the middle category here, 200,000 to 300,000, we had 24, and then in comparison to 28 versus 24 in 2016. And then in the higher categories, we had 15 homes that were built in this category here in comparison to 20 the year before. And then in the highest category, we had 9 homes built in comparison to 8. The highest home valuation for 2017 was a little over $700,000. That's probably one of the highest that we've seen within the city. Yep. With this particular chart here, these were just single-family detached homes, so these did not include twin homes. Well, actually, twin homes, they're categorized in 2 different ways. If they're built strictly as a duplex, we count them as a duplex. If they are built where they're going to be splitting the lot, then we count them as twin homes. So within the report here, we actually have, we categorize the homes by single family, duplex, and then a condo or twin home, and then multifamily. So we have 4 different categories. Eric?
Do you have a way of knowing that category
Yeah, I don't know, Ryan, would you have a handle on that or not?
That I would know.
I think I do have,
I know a few of them were built in the infill area, and there were smaller homes, but I think they were mostly spec homes. But
yeah,
Pat would also have.
yeah, I'm not sure if this is going to show up on the monitor here, but this is these are the homes in that category here of under 150,000. So you can kind of see where some of them are built on East Madison, Crescent, Kilbourne, Havenwood, Anover, Creek Ridge Drive, Old Wells Road, West Mead, Hazelton, Rist, City View, Clubhouse Lane, and then Hazelton Drive again. So that kind of gives you an example of where they're being built.
They are mostly infill. I wonder if they're rentals or
I think most of these are single-family owner-occupied.
They are.
Yep.
I should also note that these are the valuations that are given to us by the contractors.
Yeah.
So not to say they're undervalued, but again, that's valuation. Final sale price or something, maybe higher.
And they more than likely don't include the cost of the lot either. So this is just construction valuation. And then this, we'll see here. What's that? Okay. This shows the trends in terms of total dwelling unit construction from 1996 up through 2017. We had 228 units built last year. You can see that's somewhat in the average of what's occurred over the last 5 or 6 years. We've had a couple low years here, but going back to like 2006, 2005, it's fairly average of what we had seen. Then in terms of the kind of going back to the valuation, as shown here, this shows average construction for a single-family home from 1996 through 2017. And because of that larger number of single-family homes that were built in that lower category, we did see a little bit of a dip in the construction valuation of about and this is the average, $257,000 essentially was the average last year. We do keep track of the commercial industrial types of permits. So within the report here, okay, what we keep track of, we list out all the permits that were over $100,000 in valuation, and categorized by commercial and office. We had 64 permits in that particular category. And then over $1 million, we had 15 permits last year. And some of the examples of those would be Marshfield Hospital. Actually, there were 3 different permits issued for Marshfield, one for the hospital, one for the cancer center, and then there actually was another permit that was issued for Marshfield Hospital as kind of part of the overall construction. All 3 of those fell into this upper category here. But some of the other permits were like Mills Fleet Farm, Drylock, that's located up by National Presto, the Whiffley Accounting Building, the Greenpoint building that's over on Keystone Crossing, which is the multi-use building with some retail and some apartments. The Bullis Farm, this is actually the Candlewood Suites, the hotel located down by the Holiday Inn. Market and Johnson, office remodeling and expansion. The Quick Trip over on the far west side. This is the Artisan Metalworks. They had a larger permit. the People's Bank, and Aldi, and then some remodeling for over by the Gateway Plaza. So there's some examples of some of the larger permits that were commercial last year. In terms of industrial and warehouse, we had 21 projects that were over $100,000 in valuation, and 7 of those were over $1 million. Most of those related to Xcel Energy, E.O. Johnson, 2 more for Xcel Energy, B&B Electric, Pessy, and Phillips Plastics kind of rounded out the top ones in that particular category. For public and semi-public types of projects, we had 21 projects in this particular category. 8 were over $1 million. And this is where, again, we saw quite a bit of valuation also. Examples here was the University of Wisconsin, the South Tower renovations was included here for over $14 million. The YMCA Tennis Center, Sacred Heart Hospital had a remodel of their 3rd floor. And then we categorized, there were 2 CBRF memory care facilities that were built up in the Upper West Side, and we put those in this category here. One on Stonewood Drive located here, and then one located here. So both of those were grouped in this particular category. We also had Luther Hospital, or Mayo Hospital, had a 4th floor remodel. Then the fire station was included in here for a little over $4 million. So these are some of the examples of some of the larger permits in that particular category. And then for valuation for 2017 was a record year for us, where we had a valuation of over $295 million as shown here, and it basically pretty much broke all the records from what we had seen in previous years. The previous record was in 2009, as shown right here, and I think that was the year that Mayo had a substantial project where they built their hospital bed tower. I think that's what bumped this particular value up. So 2017 saw really kind of a big year for the commercial office, where we had a lot of permits, and then also in the public sector, public semi, with the university, the fire station, and the hospitals, really kind of bumped up the value. In terms of our population, we kind of track that also. Based on estimates from the state, as of the 1st of this year, our estimated population is 68,043. That compares to back at 2010, we had 61,704. So that's an increase of a little over 6,000 people over the 8-year period, which is an annual increase of about 792 persons per year. I think a lot of that gain that we saw here was earlier since 2010. I think the last couple years we've seen the population, we're estimating a more increase of about 250 to 300 people per year in the last couple years or so. And then how that relates overall, these are projections here. So this is 2020, where the projection is 69,225. We're pretty much right on track based on our estimates for 2018 that we're going to hit this pretty closely here. And then this shows, these are estimates that are put together by the state of Wisconsin. And at this point, their estimate for 2020 seems to be quite accurate. So these are updated by the state about every 5 to 10 years or so, and they're due for updates. We've had these for a little bit of time now, so I would expect they're probably going to wait until the 2020 census, and then once they get those figures, then they'll update these projections. These are all online. You can look these up for any municipality, any county within the state. And then included in the report is an overall map. This doesn't show up very well on the monitor here, but on the map itself, it will basically show the location of where a lot of the different development activity occurred. So it'll show the commercial permits, industrial, the public, and then where the different housing is occurring. And this is available online in a PDF format. And then we just wanted to show briefly kind of what's been happening in 2018. And this is our report for October. Will probably be coming out tomorrow, unfortunately, rather than today. So this is through September of this year. So this shows in terms of dwelling units constructed for 2018 year to date through September, and then comparison to 2017. So this first column here, this is single family. So you can see that we're a little bit ahead of last year's schedule for single family. This column here is for the single family condos. So you can see last year we're behind last year's pace for condominiums. This is for duplexes. So we're a little bit ahead of the pace last year for duplexes. And then this is the multifamily construction here. And you can see at this point we're a little bit behind in terms of what we had last year for multiple family. In terms of actual permits that we issued, these would be like building permits, sign permits, mechanical permits, and those electrical permits. So this kind of shows you what the workload of the inspectors are in terms of, irregardless of valuation, in terms of they still have to be out there in the field looking at these permits. So in terms of 2018, this is what our total number of permits are through September in comparison to last year. So you can see where, even though our valuation back in 2017 was way higher than what we've seen in the past, our permit activity is still pretty constant. So our inspectors are still just as busy this year as they were last year, even though our valuation might be lower. And then in terms of our actual valuation to date, as you can see here, that our valuation is about half of what it was last year, but yet our permits are almost very similar. And then in terms of some of the major projects for 2018, these are permits that have been issued pretty much to date. Any permit that would be over $1 million in valuation. We've had 21 permits so far in that particular category, and then you can see just kind of an example of what some of them are. Xcel Energy over on Western Avenue, the City Hall remodeling, the brewing project. This actually would be I think a third permit that's actually been issued for the brewing project. There were two that were issued in 2017. Carnation, the Chippewa Valley Technical College, the Hope Gospel Mission over on North Claremont, the McKinley School renovations, major project up at Hutchinson Technology, Sacred Heart, 30-unit apartment building up on Jeffers Road that the Plan Commission reviewed the site plan for earlier in the year. The Women's Health and Children's Clinic over on Stein. The two memory care units over on Bolus Farm Road. The Memorial High School renovation. Hobby Lobby, Mayo Hospital. The Mills Fleet Farm convenience store. The Chippewa Valley Airport, I think that was for a hangar. Marshfield Clinic, another permit, and then IDEX up on Alpine Road. So that kind of gives you a sample of some of the major permits that have come in this year. So with that, if you have any questions, that's just kind of a brief overview of 2017, and then there's a little bit of what's been happening so far in 2018.
Great. Nice report, Pat. I know I use it. Questions, comments for Pat? Yeah, Jeremy.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Ryder, I was wondering about the sometimes maybe plans change after a permit maybe, or there seems to be, I guess I'm running for clarification on 204 East Grand Avenue, which I think is that building, that old Wells Fargo building. It was like listed as 25 units of housing, but isn't there potentially going to be a different use for that building ultimately?
There have been some changes proposed. The permits that were issued in 2017 called for first floor commercial and then apartments on the upper floors. I think it was 25 units. It's my understanding that they still are considering apartments as part of that project. Ryan, is that correct?
Portion of it is my understanding.
So there have been some changes. So it'll be somewhat less dwellings than what were proposed and a little bit more commercial office space.
So I guess follow-up question. So do we amend these documents if there are changes made, or is that kind of?
Well, in terms of the permits were issued and what we're looking at is based on, so those values will not change, but in terms of where when we looked at our estimates for dwelling units, and we will make changes based on that in terms of what we feel our housing counts are. So we'll make changes on that. But in terms of the actual values, we're actually looking at basically what the permits came in for. And you're right that over the course of time, sometimes those change. Sometimes a permit might be issued and for some reason the project's never constructed at all. I mean, that happens too.
This is another follow-up question.
Right.
How long does a developer have to actually carry out their project? Like, say for example, I think we approved the Star Avenue apartment building that there's no construction started there, and that was approved in the spring.
Well, for a site plan lasts 3 years. So if a project doesn't come forward over that period of time, then if they did want to go forward after that 3-year period, they'd have to come back to the Plan Commission. The building permits, if it got to a point where the site plan's been approved and a building permit's been issued, then there's a certain time frame on a building permit that it would lapse to. They'd have to come back and reapply for a building permit if they didn't start construction.
And again, Pat, it's when the permit's pulled, not when the building comes online. Correct.
In terms of?
So like the permit might be pulled for the Fleet Farm gas station, but it's not going to be open until 2018.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, these figures are when the permit's pulled.
Okay. Any additional questions, comments?
All right, thanks.
I was just going to add, in terms of the building permits, they expire after 6 months of issuance, and that's kind of a rolling 6 months. So, as inspectable work happens and such, they can kind of reset some of that deadline, so to speak. But yeah, so if Star Avenue, for example, would have been issued a permit, earlier this year, that would likely have been expired then by this point.
So let's see, it takes us to acknowledgement of World Town Planning Day.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to get this out there for everyone, just to put in your calendars next to National Cappuccino Day, which is also this Thursday, November 8th. But more importantly is, no disrespect to cappuccino drinkers or purveyors, but it is also World Town Planning Day. And I just read a little bit from American Planning Association. World Town Planning Day is celebrated in 30 countries on 4 continents each November 8th. It's a special day to recognize and promote the role of planning in creating livable communities. World Town Planning Day presents an excellent opportunity to look at planning from a global perspective. And APA encourages its members, all of us here included, to consider planning challenges and solutions around the globe on that day. So just want to mention that. It was originally founded actually in 1949, believe it or not, so it's been going on for quite a while already. And it was actually founded by now the late professor of planning at the University of Buenos Aires. So it is truly a global holiday. So just want to make mention of that. Number of communities do different things for that in recognition, but just wanted to mention it. I had asked staff as well if it's something that had been acknowledged or celebrated in the past. Has not, at least not with any kind of regularity. So just take pride in the efforts you've all put forward as well. So lack of any kind of real large-scale formal, national planning day. This is the best that we have, which is World Town Planning Day. We'll share in the global side of things on November 8th. So raise your cappuccino to yourself and fellow planning commissioners and planners around the globe on Thursday. So thank you all.
All right, great. So code compliance items. Anybody have code compliance items? Future agenda items. And I've got the one kind of came up in our office on a property we manage. I guess an application was made for a sign plan, and if somebody submits and or don't know they're the tenant, do you guys then solicit ownership? So this is something that could have potentially brought in the sign plan for a building, which is something that then had it reopened without the landlord knowing.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. It didn't come to Plan Commission today, so.
So it was a sign that was.
Yeah, but in general, do you, if the tenant makes an application, do you solicit?
Oh, do they
approval by the
required to
landlord,
provide?
or
Yeah, they're
proof that
required.
they've got authority?
Required to provide ownership approval or ownership acknowledgement
Landlord
or
got a
something
little
like that.
anxious on that one.
I'll
so.
defer to the our frontline staff here in terms of reviewing the applications.
Yes, typically. However, they did provide potentially like a lease or a lease statement. The owner will be notified legally, any owner within 300 feet of the property.
Okay.
So it can go either way.
Yeah. Okay. And in like the Star Avenue property, they made the application as a potential buyer, but
Yes.
the property owner in that case did support it, of course. But
They did. Sometimes they do an offer to purchase, which
yeah,
is under
and that's-
contract,
okay.
and they
proof of
submit
is
that.
good enough. Okay.
That is correct.
Thanks.
All right.
Anybody else? Okay. Additions or corrections to the minutes? All right, I guess that makes us adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Send it up, Terry.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689 or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.